Hi, everyone. Master Jedi Colleen here, co host of Bohemian Geek Studies and yet another Star Wars podcast. But I'm not only a podcaster, I'm also an author. My second novel was published last fall and it debuted as #1 horror novel on Amazon, which was really cool. If you like Stephen King, weird happenings in small towns, or just looking for a new writer, give my novel The Falls a try. It's set in Minnesota where everyone wears that nice facade. Nothing is ever what it seems. Find The Falls by Colleen McMillan on Amazon and the Between the Lines publishing website.
Attention, culture consumers. Join me, the Queen of Queries, Sarah O'Connor, and my band of nerdy knights.
Colleen McMillan.
Flo Siegel.
And Anders Drew.
On Bohemian Geek Studies, where we take extremely dorky dives into our favorite fandoms, especially that Star Wars galaxy far, far away. Listen each week as we examine the stories that mean so much to us. Bohemian Geek Studies is available wherever you get your podcasts and is proudly part of the Forgotten Entertainment family.
Hi, I'm Shamar Griffith, codename Comic Shams.
And I'm Andrew Tejada, codename Arate.
I'm a blurred with a love for artwork and comics and animation.
And I'm a writer and blurred with a love for pretty much the same things.
We grew up together and spent much of our formative years watching and talking about DC superhero shows and content. In fact, we still do.
Every episode, we will discuss a DC production, compare it to its original source material, and share our thoughts on the adaptation.
We've enjoyed our conversations these past couple of decades, and we think you will too.
This season, we'll put a shock to our system by covering Static Shock, the animated series, on
yet another DC animated podcast. Welcome to yet another episode, yet another DC animated podcast. My name is Shamar Griffith, codename Comic Shams.
And I am Andrew Tejada, codename Arate.
Andrew and I have known each other since 1996.
That's the year Justice League: A Midsummer Nightmare came out. Apparently, Kyle Rayner stole some pages that told the future and it messed everything up. But it lets the Justice League.
I almost thought you meant that the Justice League did Shakespeare, and I was just like, sold, take all of my money.
That's what they should have done. Instead, they had to chase around Kyle Rayner because he's stealing pages that don't belong to him.
Well, why are we talking about Kyle Rayner and the rest of the Justice League? Because today we have the best ever episodes of Static Shock. At least, I don't know. They're decent.
Tied with Shaq.
Tied with Shaq. Yeah, tied with Shaq. Because today we're covering episodes 6 and 7 of season 3 of Static Shock, titled A League of Their Own. This is a two-parter. This is the first two-parter episode in the Static Shock series. It's an extension of what's happened in the season 2 premiere with Static first meeting Batman, and then again in season 3. Season 3's premiere with Static and Batman teaming up once again. So now in this time around, Static and Gear make their way to meet up with not only Batman, but the entire, well, probably like 6 of the 7 Justice League members.
Everybody else was on vacation in Colorado that week.
So we got our majority of our cast of Static coming back. Mainly, we have Static and Gear present, as well as a couple other villains in the beginning of it. But most importantly, we have a set of special guests. We have Kevin Conroy returning as Batman, Carl Lumbly, after basically voicing Anansi in our previous episode. He is here today as Martian Manhunter, the character that he has voiced for many, many years. We got Phil Lamar. I know that name sounds familiar because he is also playing Static, but he also doubles as Green Lantern John Stewart. Very excited for this early stage of this like dual work that he's doing here. Marie Canals, you may know her as #1 reporter in Dakota, Shelley Sandoval, but today we hear her in her most iconic voiceover role as Shaira Saunders Hall, aka Hawk Girl. Not bootleg Hawk Girl, the original Hawk Girl.
Oh yeah, we got the real one.
Yes. And finally, we have from season 1, Trapper's voice artist Michael Rosenbaum returns for his superhero role as the Flash. And yes, this is, if I can remember correctly, the time that this came out in 2003 would have been around the same time that Michael Rosenbaum was also playing Lex Luthor on Smallville.
So he's the Flash. Oh, that
opens some doors for you, dude.
If you guys don't know, there's a joke on Justice League where Lex takes over Flash's body and takes off the mask and's like, "Who is this guy?" When he's trying to get a secret identity. So that oh god, that's makes so much sense.
Yeah, so now that we've opened up Andrew's third eye here about this deep cut in DC knowledge, it's time to jump into the plot of our two-parter episode here, A League of Their Own.
Yeah, John's just sitting around. John Jones, Martian Manhunter, he's just sitting around chilling. Nothing really going down, except the fact that they just recently defeated Brainiac. I don't know what the timeline crossover is.
Yeah, I think I figured it out. So in season 2 of the original Justice League series, their premiere dealt with Brainiac. So I'm assuming it takes place at that point, mainly because of the styles that they have. I'm mainly basing this on that Hawkgirl. You know what? I can say this because it's been like 20, 30 years since this episode has dropped. Hawkgirl found out she was actually a traitor this entire time, and she lost her mask, she lost her mace, she didn't have the style that she had when she was like how she looked in Justice League Unlimited. So this for me confirmed that this is a Justice League episode because she had the mask and the green, yellowish, I don't know what other colors. Mainly she had the mace and the mask. That was really what confirmed that this is I think post season 2 premiere of Justice League, the animated series.
Okay, so timeline wise, they're a good team, but they're not the AA team they turn out to be later on. So they're analyzing the last piece of Brainiac, and they helpfully remind those who don't know, if this guy gets near so much as an MP3 player, it's pretty much game over for society. Brainiac is a crazy technological villain. So it's the worst case scenario when they're hit by an electric what is this
I don't think, yeah, it was called a cosmic string. I don't think this is real. Like the way it looked like a random piece of string, like was just floating through space that was just illuminated, and they were saying that it's more powerful than a solar flare, which to me just seems wild. So that they just threw this in here and just walked away.
All right, I'm going to call Neil deGrasse Tyson real quick, and I'm going to have him confirm whether this is a thing. But while he's not taking my call, we find out that Batman sent Flash around to expect any damage, and Martian Manhunter calls him around for being too fast because Flash misses that their electric core is damaged. And though he offers to light it up, Batman's like, we need a little bit more subtlety. And he decides to pull out Static out of the lineup and on a computer screen while also queuing up some impressive music to go with Static to really blow them away.
Batman's probably a whiz at PowerPoint. I'm pretty sure of it. So now we take a trip down to Dakota. They're in Dakota. Static and Gear are facing off against an ambush of some sort that was organized by Puff. Puff has teamed back up with Onyx. She's also has Francis joined alongside her. And we have the number one villain of all time, Carmen Dillo, who it seems is getting much respect in this one because at one point, Francis is just like, you always had trouble trying to beat any one of us individually. And I was just like, wait, hold on a minute. Did you just say that Carmen Dillo gave Static a run for his money?
Yeah, I'm telling you, they formed the Sinister Six, and they were like, you know who needs to be in here? Carmen Dillo, because otherwise it just falls apart. But they call themselves the Meta Men?
Yeah.
Like, all right.
Yeah.
Interesting. And to give them the Meta Men some credit, Static and Richie were actually having a little trouble with these all at once. But before they can really get into it, the Justice League rolls in, and it is a slaughter.
This thing wraps up so quick. Martian Manhunter and Batman just like walk on over the Static as this is all going down because they're like, oh yeah, they got it. It's totally fine. We're good.
Batman does take a specific new tool he has to take out Hot Streak instantly, just to, just to show Static like this can be done in minutes. Like, what are you doing?
As they are now talking with the Justice League are talking with Static and Gear, they're telling them that, hey, we have an emergency. You need to go with us right now to the Watchtower. So they take the javelin and they fly on up to the Watchtower, where Static and Gear are just like basically like geeking out over the entire experience. But that joy gets completely cut short as they find out that Static is really only here to provide some more energy to the Watchtower's core, and all Gear can do is just sit in the corner as he just waits. And he's reprimanded a lot in this episode, mainly by Hawk Girl, which I love. Hawk Girl and a couple other members of Justice League are telling Gear that he needs to sit in the corner, even to the point where when Gear tried to take out his camera to try to take a picture without them noticing, Green Lantern walks in and takes the camera and pulls it away from him, which is such a cool moment to me, because it's just like, come on, Gear, like this is the big leagues now. Like you can't be acting like a little kid, but I would definitely do the same thing.
Oh yeah, I was very entertained by GL just willing to yeet Gear on sight. Like, you're not supposed to be here. And I think we also have to draw attention to the Static shades, which are introduced in this episode, where Static puts on a special pair of shades. So maybe they were Ray-Bans while he's messing around with the power core. And so luckily, this is pretty standard stuff for Static. Everything gets recharged, but the Justice League gets a distress call. And as they're going off to this distant planet for a distress call, we are reminded that earlier during the power outage, Brainiac did leap from his containment to a computer. So now, even though Static and Gear think they're alone in the Watchtower and they're just babysitting, actually they are trapped inside there with Brainiac.
They first notice it when Static sees this random image on the TV that he comments looks like a face. This is while they're chilling in the Watchtower, looking out in space, eating a pizza, which is funny because like Gear the entire time has his full mask off, and I would have assumed that maybe he created his mask in a way that it rolls up so he can eat. But anyway, as they see this face, this is when shit starts happening basically in the Watchtower. The door leading to actual space has opened for some reason, and now is basically pulling them outside. So Gear and Static have to try to put all their effort into trying to get to different rooms and try to hit the buttons so they can close the door. Unfortunately, they are unable the first go around to do it, but luckily with the help of Backpack and just some quick thinking, they were able to hack into the system to close the door, where they get introduced to I want to say this is like a prototype of Tony Stark's Iron Legion from Age of Ultron, because it's this random robot that pops up to help them clean up.
Oh yeah, so they have this cleaning robot that has all the functionality and is dusting them off from the pizza crumbs of that DiGiorno pizza they had. And Brainiac decides to, formally introduce himself. And he quickly lets him know that his MO is the same. He wants to absorb the Earth's knowledge and then blow that up. Which, I mean, if you got all of the Earth's knowledge, and especially like 4chan or something, I can understand where you would just go, you know what? Never mind with this planet. And Static is wondering, why is Brainiac giving them all the details? He created the false distress call. They find out he's about to destroy Earth. Why do this? And Virgil's like, oh yeah, because he's distracting us. And they turn around and they realize the cleaning robot has a buzzsaw attachment for some reason.
There are so many questions that I had about that, because it was just like, what kind of cleaning does this robot do? Now it makes me afraid of ever buying a Roomba.
Oh yeah. It has a saw attachment, definitely.
Oh god. Luckily, though, Virgil was able to leap out the way in a really cool leap and a really cool scene, very actiony, as they are now trying to run away from the robot. They were able to take down the first one, but then they get introduced to what Static calls the Shack size robot.
They just make it too easy for us. So even though the Shaq size robot doesn't have long range, just like the real Shaq on the free throws, he does get in close. And for a second, it almost looks like they're done. But luckily, Richie's backpack comes with that Iron Man laser and slices through these metal cables, and they're able to get away. They instantly decide they got to let the Justice League know. And although the transmission is a little foggy, luckily, Green Lantern has the power we all wish we had in the 90s and early 2000s. He can fix the radio with his power ring. Because if you've never had to deal with an antenna going wrong on you, trust, this is a superpower.
So as they get the signal, the Justice League basically pull a Yui here and head on back to the Watchtower. Static and Gear are trying to avoid this giant robot as best as possible. And now we see that and they got there really quick too. Like I never knew this, but like apparently they can open up a wormhole with the Javelin and just like do some crazy space travel.
I guess they were prototype boom tubes.
Oh yeah, maybe.
But it does raise the question of how did it take them so quick to get back when they were clearly gone for a very long time?
Right.
Traffic cosmic gateways that you can only portal so far. I don't know, but they get back pretty quick. And there's two things I love right away about the space scene. One is the song. You want to play rough? Okay. You want to say tough? Okay. Great fight scene song. And then Brainiac has taken over the floating watchtower in space. So the Justice Leaguers decide we got to take the fight to Brainiac. And of course, Green Lantern and Hawk Girl can do it with just putting on some spacesuits. But Batman goes full Batman Beyond and jetpacks himself into space to fight a satellite with just batarangs. Like, why? Batman is the coldest hero out there. Like, come on.
By any means necessary, even if it's not logical. Like, any means necessary.
Stay in the jet, Batman. Send Flash out there. Come on.
Yeah, I know there are so many questions. Batman is too willing to throw himself into the battle, especially because the ship had more weapons. But as they are fighting the giant satellite Brainiac that's there, Static and Gear are inside. They are being held captive right now by the Shack-sized robot. However, this is a really cool skill that we learned that Static has, as we see that he's able to control the speed of this flying disc to the point where he can give the robot like a no guard fade. So now that they were able to break away there, they head on over to the power core, the main power core. And this is where Static jumps in. He starts trying to drain the power, but instantly gets caught by Brainiac and one of the mechanical tentacles. So now Gear has to use his magnificent powers of knowledge of Napster and LimeWire to shut this shit down. And I love it.
I was going to say that his plan is genius. He makes Brainiac download the same song countless a number of times to slow down his system, which absolutely would have worked in the 2000s. However, I do think if he had downloaded LimeWire and tried to download a single thing, Brainiac would have gotten a virus that would have killed him instantly. So I have to think they were just showing mercy for an AI, because LimeWire would have done the job in minutes. Where you download one song and you lose all your parents' taxes.
Yeah, I think actually, you know what? I'd rather lose the Watchtower than I would try to lose my parents' taxes. And, you know, like you said, fortunately it worked. At this point, the Justice League are still fighting outside. They're commenting on the fact that like this is legit how they're winning by having DJ Static and DJ Gear on the ones and twos here. And this gives Static an opportunity to once again jump in and completely drain the power core, because the plan was that for everything that he put into the power core, he needed to take it back out. And luckily enough, Martian Manhunter, he was able to phase in right at that moment to see them put this plan into action. So he really gave them the credit for basically saving the universe here.
Yeah, and he does so with the latest slang because we know Martian Manhunter is black. So,
yeah, 100%.
So
Happy Black History Month.
Oh yeah, every Black is not just on weekends. He is black, and he when they're wrapping up, he says like, "Oh yeah, that was very fat indeed." Static. Amazing. And the episode initially seems to wrap up pretty nicely. They go back to Earth, they take a group photo, and things seem pretty good. But we're reminded this is about to be a two-parter.
Because now that we're at the gas station of Solitude, Virgil's heading home. He's running a little late, so he's just frantically trying to pack everything up. And Richie is, doing his due diligence as putting in the mission reports and shutting things down, making sure that no lights are on so we can save some money on the Con Ed bill. But as he heads on over to shut down Backpack just starts attacking him. And that's where it was revealed that Brainiac, during the battle, before crashing due to the download of LimeWire, he downloaded himself into Backpack. And that leads us to a very ominous ending to part 1 of our League of Their Own episode.
Oh yeah, and it's a great cliffhanger. I can't imagine waiting a week for this in childhood, but luckily we had to wait until HBO Max downloaded the next episode, which was pretty instant. And we found out that the Justice League is on to Brainiac. They know that he completed at least one download. So the Justice League sends Flash down. And what I love about this interaction is that Flash is like, I'm on it. And he races away and he's like, what does Gear look like? Like, I didn't catch him without the helmet. And they reveal the footage earlier it plays of him taking off his helmet to eat the pizza. Flash knows who to find. And while he's on the way to find, Flash makes a very important stop.
I do want to go back real quick because when Batman pointed out to Flash who Gear was, part of me was just like, I'm sorry, did we expect that Flash was gonna mistake Gear and Static? I mean, have you seen them?
Hey, Flash doesn't see color. He's too fast.
But yeah, now that Flash knows what Richie looks like, he's heading on around. He stops by. He sees somebody that looks kind of like him, but it isn't him. He also stops to hit on the ladies, of course, because this is the Wally West Flash. We know it's a very much a ladies' man here. So luckily, though, he's finally able to find Richie on that iconic scooter of his that somehow is still going. So as he's talking with him, he's like noticing that Richie seems a bit off, very standoffish compared to the Gear who was like very excited to be with the Justice League just in the previous episode. And there's also a moment too where we see that Richie has several interactions earlier on in the episode that just make him seem very distant and cold. So Flash decides to go along with Richie because Richie tells him that his backpack is at the abandoned gas station of Solitude, which as they head on over to, Flash just starts clowning the abandoned gas station of Solitude. Like he acting like Richie and Static got money.
Yeah. Not like he has a Flash base. Like,
right.
Sorry guys, with the show, only on the show does Flash have access to Star Labs as his personal playground / extra place of work. They never really clarify that. But
yeah, he's broken in Spider-Man, yo. Like, come on.
We're gonna need you to calm down there, Mr. Flash. Unfortunately, even while he can clown the base, he can't clown the backpack because it is fast enough to sneak up on him and essentially capture Flash. And Flash can't even wiggle out of it with his super speed. He's stuck in there. So after Flash gets captured, Justice League sneaks up on Virgil while he's in the gas station of Solitude. The entire Justice League, not just Batman. I know how Batman and Martian Manhunter did it, but could you imagine like Hawkgirl like putting her wings on silent, carrying that heavy mace? I don't think so. I'm calling shenanigans. But they get in and they say, something's off. And upon Virgil calling Richie, it's very obvious that Richie is off. And I think Batman is like, let's go into the trap. He's like, yeah, let's do it.
So yeah, they head on over to this abandoned steel mill, I think it was. A very nice looking place though. I legit thought it was a house, like a Bel Air mansion. I was just like, okay, I mean, I guess it's a rebuild stuff. But as they are walking in, it's like the first thing that happens is that they notice little things that are just like little signals for them, knowing that like, hey, we're walking into a trap. And then Static turns on the lights and they see the extensive building that Richie has been doing, to which Green Lantern comments on is just like, yo, there's no way a high school student is doing this. And I was just like, yes, Green Lantern, we have thought the same thing this entire time throughout this entire series. As they see everything, this is when Flash, he makes his appearance and they're questioning him. It's like, yo, where have you been? What happened? And Flash just gives everybody a Brainiac Gold Star here as they all get these little discs on their chest that puts them under the control of Brainiac. But fortunately for Static, in a callback to that Attack of the Living Brain Puppets episode, but done much better here, to be honest. They state that his natural electrical field short-circuited the device, so that is why that Static is unable to be mind controlled by the device that Flash put onto him.
Yeah, I do love that little detail. That nobody else in the Justice League is immune but Static. And I assume Black Lightning would also, if y'all would have invited him, would have taken care of this. But that's neither here nor there. And in any case, he tries to reach out to Richie, and Richie can only say control. That's it. That's the only thing he can manage to get out. But he is possessed again by Brainiac, and now Static has 5 Justice Leaguers on his tail. And I gotta admit, if I was in this situation, I'd be like, well, that's it for me then. But Static does the smartest thing, which is to take flight, because 3 of them can fly. Only one of them can fly as fast as Static can with his, electric powers. So automatically he is isolating one person at a time, which is exactly how to do it. And the first person he has to worry about is Hawkgirl, the real one.
Yeah, because she was ready with that mace. Like she came through, and fortunately for Static, he's quite agile. Like I forget this, and I'm really glad to see that this 2-parter kind of really showed it, because like when he was first facing off against the robot, he was able to jump out of the way of the buzzsaw, and now this time around he's able to, as he's flying, he's able to actually pull is it still a U-turn if it curves not like a U, but in the opposite way, like he's still moving forward but then goes backward? I don't know, but he's able to pull that off and is able to tag Hawkgirl on the back, shorting out hers. Batman, he's able to grab the grapple line and send the electrical current up that way. With John, he's able to, despite John being intangible, he's able to still create a strong enough electrical pulse that knocks out the device. But the only one that does give him a bit of run for his money is Green Lantern. And I love this moment because, again, Phil LaMarr is voicing both characters. So to see 2 of his like characters go into a fight. It's just, and having that dual work of going back and forth is just so cool.
Oh yeah, and I do have to mention quick Flash. His encounter with Flash, I love.
Oh, right. Forgot about him.
Because Static tries to escape by going above water, which is already a dangerous prospect for him.
Mm-hmm.
And then when Flash is chasing him on a bridge, Static uses his static cling to magnetize the bridge and get Flash stuck, which is, I mean, again, thinking of things I would never imagine of thinking in this situation. And it does lead up to that climactic battle against Green Lantern.
But before that, too, just like with that Static fight. So one thing I think we missed is just like Static has the most baller theme song in this episode. And what they did at that moment is, as you can hear Flash's theme song playing as he's chasing down Static, as he starts to slow down, the song that plays for Flash also slows down. And it's just like really cool to have that just working alongside what's happening, because it's just like, it's also surprising that every single Justice League person has gotten like a major theme song change in this episode.
Oh yeah, I'm telling you, Bigfoot was working overtime to give everybody the theme song they deserved. And yeah, so as everything's ramping up, he goes electricity versus the Green Lantern ring, and Green Lantern ring wins out. You can't beat the power of John Stewart's will. And Static seems to be defeated, but it turns out it was a feint. He did have more juice, but he uses it to get a sneak attack on Green Lantern, which also doesn't work.
Yeah, but fortunately for him, the rest of the Justice League were able to regroup after removing the mind control devices, and Green Lantern gets hit in the back of the head with the mace. A little worried about it here, but according to Hawkgirl, we were assured that it was just a tap. Though it did sound like he basically ran through a wall. So
yeah, it sounded like he got it sounded like a Negan Walking Dead situation where he was just hit by that bat and was not coming back. But he gets back up and he's like, let's get down to business. Love how he says it. And as they approach the abandoned steel mill Elon Musk factory, I presume, they find out they're a little late because Brainiac has built a big on-brand Brainiac ship and is headed towards to Dakota to absorb all the data and destroy them. And although Static wants to go in, John Stewart immediately uses the barrier. Love the Green Lantern ring sound, by the way. I love the sound that thing makes. And he erects a barrier and says, Static, you're too close to this. You can't come along. So the Justice League goes on to take on Brainiac, who is destroying the power lines and ruining everybody's HBO experience. And Static has to stay behind and make sense of Richie's last word, control.
I'm sorry.
Hey, without those power lines, you can't watch HBO Max. It's important.
Was Brainiac the reason why the season premiere of Euphoria didn't start on time? Because
I think so. I think he had something to do with it. He downloaded it too many times.
Oh my gosh. So while Brainiac stops me from watching Space Jam 2 again, the rest of the Justice League, they take a Javelin ship. They are able to fly it into the eye of Brainiac's ship, while at the same time, Static heads on over to the abandoned gas station, the Solitude, to find the remote control, because he realizes that that's what Richie's talking about. And now this is a very high action, fast-paced scene. There's a lot of cool moments of just like fighting with the Justice League that we saw here. Like them, because what ends up happening is that as they enter into Brainiac's ship, Flash runs ahead. He ends up going right to the control room where he sees Brainiac standing there, now being powered by Backpack. And as he heads back, the Brainiac creates, I guess, like digital versions of himself, or
Yeah, some like robots that appear to like almost melt out of the ship into these fully formed beings, and they are pretty powerful. They all the Justice League has their hands full, though. I do have to love Batman trying to kick these robots. like normally, yeah, man, but here, I don't. There's not much you can do with a kick. And
again,
Flash,
man, again, by any means necessary, no matter how illogical it is.
look, if he's got some bombs in his kicks, maybe, but it didn't work. And Flash tries to vibrate himself out of the situation, but that doesn't work either. So now it's up to Static, who comes in so cool, surrounds himself because the Justice Leaguers ended in a Green Lantern spear. So Static comes in with the electric bubble to go into Brainiac's main ship. And now when they all meet up, Batman's like, all right, we need to confront Brainiac in his control room. Luckily, I have approximately 1 million pounds of C4 on me at all times.
He learned from Osebo. Just like, have the bomb already lit, ready to go, no matter what. So as they enter into the control room, Batman and Static, they are unfortunately immediately grabbed by Brainiac's mechanical tentacles once again. And Brainiac also uses one of these other tentacles to grab the remote control from Static. They are once again having to be subjected to Brainiac's villainous rant. He shares that he wants to digitize all the stuff, bring it closer to him so he can analyze it. And this is when Static is just demanding now to see where Richie is. And this is when Brainiac shows us that what was being created for him before was a full, I guess, like an exoskeleton that he controls. However, he has Richie being held in there. Really cool thing too. I just thought was like I don't know if this was truly a callback to it, but as Richie was like truly possessed by Brainiac, he started collecting more and more robotic features on his face. It kind of reminded me of the woman from Superman 3. And so I was like wondering, but now this time around, those features are completely gone. I think it's probably because it helped with forming this body that Brainiac had. And luckily enough, that the same way that I was just rambling on about this, Brainiac was also rambling on about his villainous, about his plans, and this gives Static an opportunity to fire off a bolt of lightning so precise that it pressed the power off button on the remote. And now I want this skill so badly.
Yeah, I'm wondering if he just knocked out the batteries because remotes were very fragile back then.
Oh yeah. That's true. Yeah, one fall they were like basically like they were 1,000 pieces.
But luckily, even though Brainiac said humans, you're in my house, Static shut him down and said, "This is my house now. I'm the captain." And Brainiac shuts down. They grab Richie and just. Oh, this is I don't know why I found this so funny, but as they're exiting the ship, they're like, make sure there's no trace of Brainiac. And John Jones and Green Lantern just destroy everything in that ship. They just go ham. Everything that is electronic, they destroy. It is glorious.
Yeah, this was just really cool, mainly because it's just I've never really seen moments in which John Jones was dealing with this much technology and just like wrecking it and going ham like this. So it's kind of cool now to see kind of his full strength being used here and not just being John Stewart has to clean up or actually more create the mess. But they head on over to the abandoned gas station of Solitude. John is doing a mind scan on Richie, trying to confirm that there's no trace of Brainiac left in there, and also checking where the little Romeo CD that he lent Virgil is at. That was important to Virgil. He asked for that to be checked on as well.
Crucial.
And Batman and Hawkgirl are also scanning backpack just to make sure there's no trace of Brainiac. And this is here when they get the all clear. Brainiac is no longer in Dakota. He has been wiped out of all of the systems, so they're feeling good about this. So as they're talking once again, Richie's just basically thanking the league. He's like, yo, I couldn't have been saved without you. And I'm really glad I got an opportunity to be a part of this experience. But then they immediately flip it and say that, like, you know, you should really be thanking your friend here because he really went up to bat for you. Because there's at one point earlier in the episode when the league were basically trying to like, yo, if we gotta sacrifice Richie, we gotta sacrifice Richie. So luckily though, Green Lantern, he was just like, you know, I had sided on that. So I'm glad you have a friend like Static, and you know, really hoping that when he joins the league in the future, this, you know, get to see more of this. And I just love the fact that Static has job security here. I don't know about Richie. I don't think maybe. I don't know if it's a package deal or not.
Like, we'll see how this gear turns out.
Yeah. But now, as the league leaves, you know, they give some more compliments. The league leaves, and this is when we just end our episode here. Our crossover comes to an end. So now we have to ask the question about, you know, how'd you feel about this episode? How did it feel for this crossover event?
The highest compliment I can give it, I'm going to give it, which it felt like an episode of Justice League Unlimited.
Yeah.
Where you take a hero that is not always utilized, you know, basically your questions, your huntresses, your Black Canaries, you find a mission for them where it suits their abilities and talents, and then you build the episode around that without cheapening the other characters, because everyone feels strong, everyone feels unique. But the fact is that this was a very specific mission where Static was needed, but it didn't feel like they were pandering to work Static in. They really put him front and center. And the best comparison I can think of is Book of Boba Fett. Giving it as vague as I can. A character comes into the show with the skill set that is somewhat redundant to other assassins on the show, and kind of steals attention from Boba Fett. And it feels like they've taken over the show. But here, Static has such a distinct skill set that he doesn't overpower the other league members. The other league members don't overpower him. So it does feel like an equal partnership. And I think that's what's great about this crossover.
Yeah, agreed. Especially because something that I was expecting after watching this episode, I caught myself saying, where was Superman? Like, Brainiac is a Superman villain. Like, you can't have a Brainiac story arc without some mention of Krypton or even just Supergirl, at least. I mean, heck, you even take Crypto. You know, it's wild that we were able to create a story where Brainiac is a main villain and not have Superman in it whatsoever. And it still worked alongside them because, yeah, you had the Justice League with the knowledge of who Brainiac is and all that. But then you have both Static and Gear, both of their power sets match up very well to the issue that Brainiac is producing. Like, the intelligence, the technological know-how, all of that ties in with Gear. And then you have the fact that it's so many different robots and electrical interfaces and all that. You got Static. So it's just like Brainiac somehow wasn't expecting this, is a good villain for Static and Gear.
Oh yeah. Yeah, he's a perfect counterpoint. You couldn't have picked anyone better. You know, they didn't pair him up against like Vandal Savage.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think they would have gotten murked on like minute one, actually. That would have been bad.
Vandal or Raish would have killed them.
Yeah.
And put them in a Lazarus pit.
Just do it again. This is Naruto. This is basically Itachi just sending you through years and years of pain. But yeah, it's wild to see that we were able to create this really awesome Justice League Unlimited feeling episode for Static and Gear. in the last couple of episodes of season 3, it did seem like there was a bit of growing pains, especially with the whole shebang arc. Like, a lot of it seemed like they were still trying to get acclimated to being the new superheroes that they are now, and the duo that they are now. But this one, it was just like to bring them up to this level for what many would count as I guess like a preliminary crisis event. Like if it went further, this could definitely have been a crisis event. To have it now being that like Brainiac, who is such a big figure in the Superman animated series and the Superman story in general. So to have him go toe to toe with these two newcomers, it's awesome. I'm glad that we got this story and this crossover. I know that we were supposed to get I mentioned it previously, we were supposed to get a Teen Titans and Static crossover. So I think that this still works because Static has always only dealt with Batman, and at times it was good, but then comic book wise, when that happens, Batman just creates a team of outsiders. And the more that Static was dealing only with Batman, he probably would have long term only ended up on this outsiders team. I don't think he would have made it into the Justice League. To have it now be that like they got a chance to show the Justice League what they can do and how they act and how serious they are as heroes, this is what I'm looking forward to for the history of Static and why this event needed to happen.
These episodes really just showing how important Static can be to the DC universe if you just give him the chance. Like we've been pleading for years. So hopefully if any executives are questioning where would Static fit in with all these other heroes, here you go. If you're not going to make that Cyborg movie, why don't we get Static?
Yes. So that was our episode, and there isn't much comic book knowledge that I can drop here, except this one big character, because I realized we have never talked about him because he wasn't in the our season 1 run through of the DC AMU films.
Carmendillo.
Man, one of these days I'm gonna find this Carmendillo comic for you, even if I have to create it. But no, we are talking about Brainiac today. This is one of his biggest moments in the animated universe. He has a lot of stories dealing either in the Justice League show, mostly on Unlimited, but also in the animated series for Superman. But that's mainly because he is hands down one of Superman's greatest enemies. Probably, I mean, if he really had to put it, it's like he's like up there with like Doomsday and Lex Luthor for most like iconic villains that Superman's ever faced off against. In fact, he is so bad, he is so evil that in 2009, he was ranked number 17 in the greatest villains of all time list.
You got Joker, you got Rish. That's a pretty good place to be.
Yeah. And especially just given his story, which we find out and kind of see like a bit of different iterations in. So back in 1958, he premiered in Action Comics number 242. He was created by Otto Binder and Al Plastino. And in this story, it is very much kind of very similar to what we know iconically about Brainiac. He faces off against Superman. He presents himself as this alien who takes cities and shrinks them. In this particular comic, he had already shrunk Manhattan, Metropolis, and also another location. And that's what led to him crossing paths with Superman. The idea of Brainiac came from Plastino and Binder wanting to create a mean genius. So that's why they combined the names of Brain and Maniac to create evil genius here. And that is how Brainiac got his name.
That is so obvious, and I have never put that together.
You know what's even funnier? There is no mention, at least this has been going back and forth, that the term Brainiac that we use now actually came from this DC villain. There was no record of the word Brainiac prior to this comic book creation.
Looks like comics once again leading the way to education.
Yeah, It's right there. Like there's some people who contest this because there is a machine that is called the ENIAC machine, is one of the first computers. But I feel like when you have an actual Brainiac name here and no one was using it until this comic had dropped, that's where it came from. And in Action Comics number 242, that intro comic that he had, again, he was this greenish alien who had who was bald, and once again, kind of looked like how he looks like in the Krypton television series, or I think also Legion of Superheroes, the animated series, also did a very similar green look to him. And he wanted to shrink these cities. He wanted to recreate his former planet that he had rule over. And he wanted to do so by taking all these like really popular cities throughout the cosmos, specifically ended up being on Earth, and find out what worked for them. Like, why were they so magnificent and flourishing? Because for his home, the fact that he lost it and the fact that he was ruling over it, he felt a little bit of responsibility to bring it back. So Superman decided to go fight up against him. Unfortunately, Superman did get caught in one of these shrinking rays. And that is actually where we find out about Kandor. So Kandor is the lost city of Krypton, where prior to the destruction of Krypton, it seems that Brainiac actually had grabbed it right before the planet blew up and has been holding on to it this entire time until Superman was able to save them and bring them back to his Fortress of Solitude so he could find out a way to grow the city back to its normal size.
Wow, that's one advanced snow globe they got there.
So again, because the comics, though, the story was retconned in 1964 in Superman issue number 167. And that is where we actually see the lined markings on his head. So in our episode of Static, we saw that everybody that was taken over by Brainiac had his little logo there, which is like the V that was basically the circles at the very ends of where the lines met. And this is because this is when they introduced the idea that Brainiac is actually not an alien, but rather a machine that was created by these colonizing tyrants from the planet Kolu. And these dots were actually the diodes that connected to his nervous system. And it was just such a cool stylistic look to him that people just decided to keep it throughout the years, because it's just like really, it's like branding. They were able to create a logo that as soon as you saw it, you recognize that was connected to Brainiac. And since then, people have just toyed around with it a lot, especially with creating the designs so it looks like red dots on his head. Now we have the coolest part about Brainiac, which I love the most, is that ship. It is so cool. It looks like a mechanical tentacruel. Like it's everything I love about it. It's actually an extension of his own being. It was created after DC Comics started to like fail a little bit, because during the Bronze Age, like the sales of comics started to go down. So they tried to reinvent everything. And including to the point where instead of making Brainiac look this greenish way, they made him look more metallic and definitely more sinister, and also created the ship for him, which he was able to manipulate and do the same things that he did in this episode, the Static Shock. However, once Crisis happened, they completely changed up the way he looked there, but were able to keep the ship. So I think that just became such a cool part about Brainiac's story that just made sense to keep it in this day and age. And why I think at this point, you've probably seen it pop up in the DCAU at least 3 times.
Yeah, I think so. It's just a classic design.
Mm-hmm. And finally, the most important comic that I could recommend to read for any kind of Brainiac story arc is the Action Comics 866 through 870 by Jeff Johns and Gary Frank. This comic, titled Superman and Brainiac, basically created the Brainiac story and really kind of finalized it. It took all the elements of what we talked about here, his greenish looking skin, the markings that he has on his head and his ship, and finally made it that these were all connected into this one story even to the point where they are connecting all the other versions of him throughout time and history and crisis events, and are saying that like these were all different versions of him that popped up throughout history. And it's been used so often that the story is what influenced like the show Krypton. It's something that we also see a lot of the paneling you could actually see in Superman Unbound, the animated movie, and even to the point where it was included in the Injustice 2 game. Not the Injustice movie. We don't talk about that movie.
You don't talk about that, Bruno.
But my favorite thing that came out of that comic was the fact that Brainiac's a germaphobe.
So he too is defeated by 99% of germs.
Because what happened here in that story, Superman was able to push him out of his ship, and he fell into a swamp. And this is when we found out that Brainiac is highly allergic to any kind of bacteria and disease, because his ship created such a sterile environment that he had no immunity to anything that was outside of it. And that is what ended up killing him in that story arc. And it's something that I don't think we have seen in other iterations. I think because it does sound a little ridiculous, but it is kind of cool knowing that like basically Brainiac might be a mask wearer.
Yeah, and like Swamp Thing would be his mortal nemesis.
Oh my god. Yeah, actually, you know what? I would definitely pay to see that Battle of the Green.
Swamp Thing just shows up. It's like, what? No. It just shuts it down.
He just like waves his hand real quick and it's just like, ah. But yeah, I really wanted to see why was it that we never actually talked about Brainiac, mainly because in New 52, they kind of introduced him during the Superman Doomed story arc, where Superman becomes Doomsday. He gets infected by a virus that kind of like turns him into it. And there are moments in that story that Brainiac was a big part of. And then we find out that the main reason why he was collecting these small places in this way is because he thinks that the collective knowledge of all the people there have the ability to give him the ability to basically bend time and space to his will.
Okay, anti-life.
Thank
equation
you.
Kind of guy.
Yeah. And that's why we did not include them into the animated film. So we talked about in our first season. And I realize that now because it really would have just been Brainiac versus Darkseid versus Trigon, the fight that we really wanted to see.
Versus Carmendello. I get you. I get you. 4-way grudge match till the end.
But yeah, that's all our comic book stuff here. Brainiac has a lot of cool stuff, especially just in the Superman animated series. There's a lot of, it's really kind of cool to see a character who is a villain because he is this smart. I know we have like Lex Luthor and all that, but this guy, Brainiac, is just on a whole other level compared to that. Yeah, that's our episode. So we got a lot more stuff coming on for season 3. Unfortunately, no more crossover episodes for the foreseeable season, but we have a great number of returning cast members, especially Carmendello's coming through. Hopefully they get some more soundtracks to their song. And until then, take care of yourselves, and remember that if you want to take pictures because you see your idol hanging around or something, bring a backup camera.
Yes, and always carry around a flash drive full of LimeWire files, just in case you need to stop an evil AI.
Yes, we learned that from Y2K. Now that we've finished talking about our DC animated content, here are some recommended readings for you. All these comics and more can be found at your local comic shop, so remember to venture out and support your part of the source wall, and tell them Andrew and Shamar sent you. The first comic on our list is Superman Brainiac. This arc, taking place in Action Comics numbers 866 through 870, was released in 2008 by Jeff Johns and Gary Frank. It's probably the most definitive story in the history of Brainiac, as it combines his original stories while adding more context in the contemporary retelling. It will end up inspiring many versions of the Brainiac character in the future, like in versions of Krypton and our next adaptation for our list, Superman Unbound. The 2013 animated film pulls right from the comic as we see Superman and Supergirl face off against Brainiac when he comes to Earth. Finally, we're taking it back to where you probably have your most Brainiac knowledge with Superman the Animated Series. The second series created within the DCAU Denny Timverse shows the most cold and calculated version of Brainiac that we know and love, especially in the episodes Stolen Memories from Season 1 Episode 8, Ghost in the Machine from Season 2 Episode 9, and New Kids in Town Season 3 Episode 8. But don't worry, his journey continues later on in episodes of Justice League and Justice League Unlimited. That's all for our list. Thank you for listening, and be sure to rate, review, and follow yet another DC animated podcast. Also, interact with us on social media for news on upcoming content. Take care, and we'll see you for the next issue.